Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order, the July 9th, 2020 meeting of the Johnson County Library Board of Directors. First thing up is citizen comments. Sean, do we have any to read?
We have no citizen comments on this this time to read or for me to share with you.
Okay, thank you. Members of the Board of Directors, does any director have any comment they would like to make? All right, well, I think that is none, and we'll move on. For me, first of all, I'd just like to thank all of the staff and volunteers of all their hard work during all this COVID and really not knowing what's happening in the future, and just I really appreciate all that you've done and kept keeping us informed, and I appreciate all the updates that we've been getting, Sean.
You're welcome.
Next, we have the Friends of the Library written report presented by a board member. Is that person online?
Yes, I am Courtney Ramlow. I am on the board of the Friends of the Library, and I will be giving the report. So thank you for having me. There are 3 subjects in the report today: the revenue generation, Friends Bookstores reopen plans, the community relations, donation acceptance events at Pine Ridge, and internet sales factoids. So the first one, revenue generation, Friends Bookstores reopen plans. The Friends Bookstores shop by appointment is starting up on Thursday, July 9th, so today. Anyone may make an appointment on a Monday or Thursday to shop at one of the 3 bookstores. The Friends has been working closely with the library's reopen team to ensure we are in step with in-building protocols such as plexi shields in place at cashier stations, physical distancing stickers on the floors, and regularly cleaning schedules are established. There are some shop by appointment details, which is 24 hours advance appointments, 30 minutes for browsing, 4 customer limit for low to no contact shopping, face coverings are required in public places, and there's no membership necessary. Are there any questions about the first topic? All right. Number 2, community relations, donations acceptance event at Pine Ridge. Book donation acceptance at the sorting center has resumed on a limited basis. New processes allow us to provide this valued service to our community and to keep up with the flow of incoming materials. It kicked off with a catch-up shift the evening of Thursday, June 30th, where they supervised a team of teen volunteers who wore masks, kept appropriate distance, and who helped unload and transport donations from 50 donors over 2 hours. The donations averaged 6 boxes per car for approximately 12,000 items received. Incoming donations were quarantined for 72 hours before volunteers could sort them, and then library staff are referring all donation inquiries directly to the Friends who schedule the receipt. We may have received many additional calls from residents eager to donate their materials to support the library, and another event will be scheduled soon. And then the last one about internet sales, we have completed a transition to a new internet inventory management software. And then during the past 30 days, 719 items have been sold, which generated $10,185. And of note, the World Book Encyclopedia of 2018, which is a 22 volume set, sold for $225.69. And then you can see the other 3 that were listed there. So that is the Friends report.
Does anybody have any questions? All right, thank you very, very much. Moving on, we have Stephanie Stolzheimer with the foundation.
Hello, everybody. I'm Stephanie Stolzheimer. I'm delighted to report on behalf of the foundation. And first of all, I just want to say, can you believe the Friends? Oh my goodness, they just keep bouncing. Every time you turn around, the Friends are doing something new and exciting. They're impressive. They are an impressive group and inspiring to the foundation, because the foundation has had to pivot a time or two, and we find inspiration with the Friends. So the Library Let's Loose fundraising event is going virtual, and it's coming together in a way that I can't even describe. It's we'll have pre-recorded portions. We will have some live portions. It's just going to be a very fun and meaningful virtual fundraising event. And we're just, every day is a new decision on what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. And we're so grateful because sponsors are coming along with us. Recruitment is underway, and we have nearly $40,000 from about 23 sponsors, and we still have some time to keep bringing them in. And people are supporting the library, and it's inspirational. We've added to the Library Let's Loose a video series. We're producing an 8-part video series that will promote the library and the event. And we have celebrity guests who are going to read a portion of a book or a story that's important to them. So stay tuned to that. It's a very fun way to add to this digital and virtual experience. We also want to announce that it's a free event. The sponsorships are really going to pay for our expenses, and we're promoting it as a free family-friendly event. So we're going to share the link to get free tickets all around, and we're excited to have maybe more people than ever join us. And then, gosh, we're sending out invitations soon, end of the month or the first part of August. And then grants, we received a grant recently from Village Presbyterian for $4,000 for adult incarcerated services. And we received a $10,000 donation from Flarsheim Foundation for summer reading. So we're finding that the foundations are giving. If it hits a note with what they want to do, we have still had some good success there. Speaking of a project that is hitting a note, Race Project KC has really received some interesting attention from donors. Last month I mentioned that Angel Tucker coordinated with Congresswoman Sharice Davids on an email, and that has resulted in nearly 90 gifts for a total of $6,000. We also had an area sports bar, Johnny Cause, make a donation of nearly $6,000. And the donations keep coming in. It's inspiring to see how people are rallying around the purpose of Race Project KC. And finally, the Form 990 tax return. Just something that we do. And the thing is, for the foundation, it's actually an important document to communicate the work of the foundation and the library. So we are getting that taken care of, and that concludes my report. Are there any questions? Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie.
You bet.
All right, let's see. Next we have up is our County Commissioner Liaison, Janae Hanslick.
Thank you, Amy. I want to read a statement that I have written in response to a conversation at the last meeting. At the Johnson County Library Board meeting on June 11th, there was concern expressed about the lack of support for the library from the Department of Health and Environment, or DHE. And I want to report that staff and I looked into this situation, and with additional information, it became apparent that the problem was not an unwillingness to seek support or to provide support. Both the library and the Department of Health and Environment have demonstrated what I would call heroic willingness to provide support to other county operations, including the courts, Human Services, Aging, and many other departments. The problem discussed at the June 11th meeting stemmed not from anyone's willful intent or neglect, but from misperceptions and misunderstandings in communications, which we all know often suffer, excuse me, in high pressure emergency situations. I'm satisfied that the situation arose because of extraordinary circumstances and that now and moving forward, there will be increased communication and collaboration. I trust that this issue will no longer be a problem and the library board can utilize its time on other more pressing matters. And with that, I will just also say that I continue to be grateful for the e-book resources of the library. And I'm currently listening to a book called American Heiress. It's this story of Patty Hearst. So I'd highly recommend it. And it's great to listen to in the car. So with that, I will turn the floor back to Amy, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for sharing that with us. Next, we have Board Counsel Fred Logan.
Thank you. Sure. I'm not on mute, am I?
No, we can hear you.
Good, thank you. I've been asked by staff to comment on two items. The first has to do with holding executive sessions. And I think it's always good to review the rules on this. The library has been extraordinarily careful in how it uses executive sessions and always for very limited purposes. Basically, there are four purposes under the statute under which the library board in recent years has called executive sessions. The first is in any area of personnel. There's a personnel matter, then that is one of the grounds where an executive session is appropriate. Another ground that has been utilized by the board is for consultation with the board's counsel that's privileged under the attorney-client privilege. That has been used on occasion where an issue arises. The third deals with real estate. If the library is in preliminary discussions on either the possible acquisition of real estate or rental of real estate or sale of real estate, it's authorized to go into an executive session to consider that. And then the fourth ground is a relatively new one that the library has utilized now, I believe, once and will no doubt utilize again. And that's where there are discussions of security measures that protect systems or staff. And so if, for example, HR or another department wanted to come in and discuss specific issues on that, then that would be appropriate for an executive session. We always prepare those motions in advance so that we make sure we get it right. And the library's been very cautious about using those and always very careful in how it sets those up. The second item on which we were asked to comment has to do with the Civil Rights Act and LGBTQ coverage. And I believe that request came as a result of the issuance of a landmark case by the United States Supreme Court called Bostock versus Clayton County, Georgia. And the lead opinion was issued by Justice Gorsuch, and he was joined by Chief Justice Roberts and Justices Ginsburg, Breyer, Sotomayor, and Kagan. And what the court held was that an employer who fires an individual merely for being gay or transgender violates Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Put another way during the opinion, they say an employer who discriminates against homosexual or transgender employees necessarily and intentionally applies sex-based rules, and therefore Title VII of the Civil Rights Act is brought into play. There's been much comment on this, much comment about the fact that Justice Gorsuch wrote the lead opinion, but it is it's one of several landmark opinions issued by the Supreme Court this year. So I think Madam Chair, those were the items on which we were asked to comment. And that's Board Council report.
Does anybody have any questions for Fred? Okay, thank you, Fred. Thanks for the update.
Yep.
All right, moving on to Sean, the county librarian report.
Thank you. I just want to reiterate what Commissioner Hanslick said. Joe Waters and I had a chance to talk, and what I can say is Dr. Ariola from the Department of Health and Environment is doing an outstanding job in a very difficult situation, and we have fixed the communication problems and that we've had. Everyone is focused on the same goal, which is to keep our community safe and our staff safe. And I can happy to report that the Department of Health and County not only provided us shielding for all our service points, but also has been providing disposable masks to offer to our patrons as they come in over the last week. And we're really deeply appreciative of this collaboration and how we're stepping forward to ensure that safety for our citizens. At this point, I'd like to invite David Vratney to give the financial report, and then Adam Wathen to do statistics, followed by Melissa, Andre, and Laura Hunt on the trends in communication. David?
Yep, great. Thanks, Sean. So direct you to page 10 of the yeah, here we go. Yep, good. So looking at this shows, I think, gives a pretty good comprehensive view of what's going on. As disruptive as the year has been, our revenue situation remains about where we thought it would have been or should be. As you can see, to date, we've brought in about 21.3 million of the 40.4 million that we anticipate to bring in for 2020, which represents about 53%. And how that compares to how we did last year, we were at about 54%. The main disruptions, if you looked at it, have really been in the library generated revenues, the copy, printing, overdues, and fees. Well, we were closed for a better part of several months, and so that's had an impact on those revenues. And then you'd see the ad valorem delinquent. We have received some since this report, so I think that's heading in a different direction than it was earlier. So so overall, I think revenues are good. Our expenses are low. I think in part, well, large part was salaries and benefits. And that's the result of our furloughing efforts, and we have some positions, obviously, that are vacant at this current point in time. So, and to date, we've spent, and this is with the collections encumbrance in there as part of it, roughly 34% to the 42% of our way through the year. So, so I think things look really good from a revenue perspective, and our expenses look in line with where I think they should be based on some of the measures we took here dealing with the pandemic. So with that, I'll stand for any questions you might have. Okay. All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Adam, would you like to share with us this month's statistics?
Yes. Adam Wathen, Associate Director for System-Wide Services for Johnson County Library. And it has been a couple of months since we presented a statistical report to you. Today, I'll be presenting the core operational statistics, the 2019 statistical report for our communications team, and a short report on reopening statistical trends. And then after that, our communications team will give a more in-depth report on Johnson County Library's communication trends. So this month, our core operational statistics include through the month of May. And of course, we reopened our 3 drive-throughs in May, but we did not yet have circulation at all of our branches, and we hadn't opened up our branches to the public yet. So you can see that reflected in the statistics with our digital usage getting a bump when we closed in March and continuing its rise through May, and then our physical usage bottoming out in April and beginning to increase at the end of May. You'll see a different snapshot of our physical circulation when I show you the statistics on reopening in a few minutes. On the next page, in July, we are focusing on trends in communication. And this covers our trends in marketing and social media. This year, we had a large transition in our communication team. As you may know, we have hired Laura Hunt as our internal communication manager, which is a new position to us. And we also hired an external communication manager, who is Alyssa Andre, and you'll hear from her in a few minutes. The statistics here reflect 2019 data as it relates to previous years. The first chart shows the number of impressions, which is the number of times that patrons see our content. You can see growth from over 7 million impressions to over 16 million impressions over the last 4 years. And you'll notice that this growth was in our paid media impressions between 2017 and 2018. And then in 2019, we maintained that growth in paid media impressions, and we also increased our social media impressions. The next chart is about social media followers. You can see consistent growth in Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram followers over the last 4 years. And then the next chart is about website visits, and both our web visits and our catalog visits have remained fairly consistent over 4 years. And finally, this chart compares our marketing spend with the key outcomes. So our goal would be that this cost ratio would trend downward as we refine our marketing and become more effective. And we do see that our expenditure compared with these outcomes is decreasing over time. So even though we've seen even as we've seen an increase in the number of impressions that we get, we're still seeing a lower expenditure based on our circulation, our visits, and our users. So it seems to be more effective over time. And then finally, I wanted to show 2 slides of trends showing our reopening usage. I'll wait for those. And so the first slide here, these 2 slides compare the last 2 weeks of June from 2019 to the same 2 weeks in 2020. We reopened our libraries on June 15th, so the comparison numbers give us a sense of the activity since we reopened. The first slide shows our checkouts. We've seen a 28% decrease in the number of individual users checking out materials. And this is approximately our door count, even though not everybody who comes to our door checks out materials, and that's not accounted for here. This shows how many patrons are checking out materials at our branches. And so it's about a quarter of drop, 28% drop. And in the next chart, you see that we've seen a 24% decrease in the number of items checked out over that same period. So that remains fairly consistent. On the next page, you'll see information about our holds. We've seen a 6% decrease in holds placed from the same period last year. But you can see in the next slide that the number of items that we've received in branches to meet our holds is significantly higher than last year. It's higher by 29%. And this is likely due to us catching up after having been closed. And we were able to, when we reopened, fill patron holds that were waiting for items from collections and branches that had not been opened. And so that I expect that these numbers will even out over the next month or so. And we will be watching that and reporting back on these trends and seeing how they compare to previous years and the effect that our COVID mitigations are having on our service lines. Any questions for me on these? Or on any
Adam,
of those?
Adam, how much do we spend on marketing? You know, this is David.
Sure. I think I'm going to need to get back to you on that. We might, that might be in Alyssa's presentation, but if I can get back to you on that, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, that's
I think
fine.
I have that in the raw data, but I don't have that spreadsheet pulled up.
No problem.
Thank you.
Bethany Griffith. Adam, I have a question on our social media presence.
Yeah.
I think it might have been in a budget meeting when we were talking about marketing a few years ago. We were talking about social media and kind of where we focus our impressions. And my daughter, who is now 12 and is finally allowed Instagram, insert angel choirs singing. And one of the first things she asked was if the library did Instagram stuff, and kind of like, I don't think that we really focus a lot, but we were kind of talking about that, and people of her generation certainly use that more than old people like me. But that might be an avenue with exploring with youth services, maybe more than anything, is there would be an opportunity for, even if it was just, pictures of books, recommendations, library cat pictures, which my daughter still thinks that the library should have a cat, just FYI. That's only because her father won't let her have another one here. But a way to engage kids, and especially since so much of what we're doing now is digital anyway, that the Sparkle, the unicorn, could certainly curate the Instagram feed and have takeovers, that there would be a lot of opportunity to have engagement with some of our younger patrons. And even, there are hideous TikTok videos of dances, and there could be all kinds of scope for public engagement with people we want to turn into readers, to ensure stay readers and engaged with library services. And it has the benefit of being free other than staff time, that it doesn't cost us anything to engage with them other than making that just a part of somebody's portfolio in terms of their job.
Sure, thank you very much. That Alyssa's on here and she's in charge of that, of our marketing. And so she may have a response to that, but also she's hearing. So thank you for your idea. And so I'm sure Alyssa will be able to carry that forward. And while you were talking about that, I was able to pull up our spreadsheet and show that that our spend is about, in 2019 it was $52,000 or almost $53,000, and in 2018 it was more than that at $127,000, and so that was somewhat to hold out for a campaign. So okay, and then I think if there are no more questions, I'll turn it over to Alyssa to do her presentation.
Yep. Just before we have a list of, one of the things I wanted to share with the board is, remember, even though we're down 28%, we're only open 60% of our normal hours. So in many ways, the libraries are busier in the times that we're open than we were in normal times. We're continuing to work on the staffing issue, and the goal is to restore the hours, but people are really using the library, and I think if we continue to do what we're doing and create a safe environment, I think that remaining 28% will return over time. Alyssa?
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay? I'm in the office and I'm very excited to be away from my dogs and my toddler. So thank you for this opportunity to speak to you guys today. And just Bethany, I wanted to say, yes, that's such an excellent point. We are really growing our Instagram presence. We've got some really great content on there and some content creators that are being really creative and looking for ways to really reach that young audience. So thanks for that suggestion. And we are definitely working hard on increasing that in 2020. So we have in CX communications, customer experience, a really talented, really busy, and relatively small team. I'm really excited about the evolution of the department now that Laura and I have joined the team. I started mid-February 2020, and I believe Laura started end of December, early January 2020. So we definitely have a lot of work ahead of us. And again, I'm just really thankful to be a part of this really supportive and talented team. Wanted to share with you guys some more information about what we do today, just so you know what's going on behind the scenes. So again, our team, we have the Associate Director of Customer Experience, Ben Sons. myself, the external communication manager, Alyssa Andre, our new internal communication manager, Laura Hunt, who's on this call as well. And our newest addition to the team is the project coordinator, Scott Syme, who moved over to our communication side because he's doing so much work with the public and all of our different capital projects. So welcome, Scott. We're glad to have you. Next slide, please. We have Ben Oglesby. He's our marketing specialist. So any sort of paid media, he handles. We have our communication specialists, Cindy Fraser and Jennifer Taylor. They were formerly creative services, so they handle a lot of our printing, our signs. We can see we've got a big pile of signs, you can see on my desk. All of our different COVID stuff. They've been really instrumental in getting everything taken care of and handling our library guide and flyers and bookmarks and pretty much anything they can handle. We've got our web content team, which is Dave Carson. He primarily works on our multimedia. We've got Mary Cummings, who helps with internal communication primarily, and shout out to Amy Field, who is currently moderating our social media feed. So thank you, Amy, for your hard work right now. And she primarily handles our social media content. Next slide, please. So what we do a lot. We have our hands in a lot of pies. We handle the content on our website. So anything from the blog posts to hours updates and the alerts that you see on the top of the page, the communications team is handling. We do social media. So we have Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn. We do content creation. So we make videos. Hopefully you guys saw the how to place a hold video that we recently did. We do all the screens that are inside the libraries. We write the CERC emails that goes out in the content. We do all the print materials, which includes Elementia, like you'll see on the screen, which we're really proud of this year. It's a beautiful addition. And library card applications is one of the print materials. We do public relations, work with the media, marketing and advertising, paid advertisements with partners across the city. We handle the newsletters. Hopefully you guys are getting the new edition of the Open Book, which just came out on Tuesday. We handle publications. We work with County for JOCO Magazine. We also work with the Book Report. We handle a column in the Best Times magazine. We work with partner organizations. We're partnering with Catholic Charities this summer to do a food distribution and promote that. We also work with the American Red Cross to organize blood drives, and we work with the County PIO's office. We have a great relationship with them, just making sure that there's a good funnel going back and forth between our organizations. So just a small sampling of what we're working on. So our internal communication, the former communication manager position focused on both internal and external, and that was a lot of work. So this position was created to address our organizational growth. We added a significant amount of staff, especially with the reopenings of Monticello and Lenexa. And so we needed a way to really build staff unity and make sure that we are getting the message out to staff that we need to. So we hired Laura Hunt. She's the former Central Resource Library branch manager. She was hired December 2019, and we both kind of jumped in the deep end. The Open Book is our new e-newsletter. It's going out to all patrons unless they opted out. So I think it's about 150,000 people are being sent this newsletter once per month, the first Tuesday of each month. So we've had now 5 open books go out, and we've seen some really great statistics on that. Next slide, please. So the industry average for these sort of newsletters, average open rate is around 15 to 20%, and the click-through rate is usually around 2.5%. So as you can see, we're right on trend with the click rate, and with the open rate, we are well above average. So that's really exciting. That means patrons are interested in our content. They're finding it useful. This is the unique open rate. So that's the single time people click on it. We are finding that many people are clicking through 2, 3, 4 times to access the content. So that's really exciting as well. We're also sending this email out to staff a few days before it goes out to patrons to make sure that they are aware of everything going on and can talk to patrons about the content that they see in the newsletter. So our staff open rates have been pretty high too, and the click-through as well. So we're excited about that. Next slide, please. So we really want to expand our newsletter presence. We kicked off a summer reading newsletter just to try and do something new. So that was an opt-in only. We had about 600 people subscribe. And so in June 8th, our first audience was about 568 people. June 22nd, it grew to 615. And then we added another 50 or so more for the next newsletter. So our open rate is 67.8 and 63.7%, which is just phenomenal. Our newsletter company was really blown away by the statistics of this and the click-through rate as well. So we're really excited about the potential for that. Newsletter growth opportunities, we're looking to expand to a kids and family newsletter over the fall, especially as the school reopenings are very uncertain. We want to make sure that we're supporting kids and family with all of our library resources. We're going to add a development newsletter. We're looking into opportunities for a career and finance programming, knowing that's a really huge focus right now for our community, and Race Project KC to make sure that their resources are getting out into the community. Next slide, please. So obviously we've done a lot of communicating over the last several months. So we had our building closures, just an example of the external messaging that we had to do. We've done library services updates. We did letters from Sean. We worked with media like the Shawnee Mission Post to do posts about our e-resources, patron FAQs, etc. And I did just want to say that I think it was a meeting or two ago, somebody was wondering if the board postings about our e-resources had any effect. And I wanted to say that yes, it did have an effect. So thank you so much for supporting us. We did see a pretty decent bump in e-resource use after you guys posted it. So I appreciate it. Definitely making my job easier. Next slide, please. Building reopenings, also something that required a lot of communication. Just a small sampling, we had to do multiple FAQs, social media posts, blog posts, imaging. We did a lot of press. Hopefully you guys saw a couple of the fun stories that we did, like Fox 4 at our branches. We've made some video content to help people who aren't as familiar with using the holds of the library. Again, lots of patron communication via email, lots of communication needed around modified hours. Next slide, please. And then internal messaging, Laura has been just amazing. We've heard a lot of really great feedback from people about how they feel connected to what's going on in the library. So thank you, Laura. She worked on field notes, which kind of brought together staff, showed what they were doing while we were working remotely and in the branches. Lots of welcome back messaging to people as they returned from furlough to make sure that they were caught up with everything that had changed. And videos, FAQs, lots of messaging from admin, etc. Next slide, please. So looking ahead, again, I'm just really excited about the evolution that our department is able to undergo over the next year and more. Department initiatives that we're working on is a new events platform, which rolled out, I believe, 2 weeks ago now. So now it's being hosted by the same company that hosts our catalog. So it's easier to find events. It's easier to sort through and find events that are relevant to you and close to you. It's a really great way to communicate with patrons and advertise more events that are coming up. So we're really excited about how clean and easy to use this new platform is. And we're going to be doing some marketing surrounding that in the coming months. We have a new library card campaign coming up. This is something that was started before I arrived. We've got new library card designs that we'll be rolling out over the next several months, and a campaign that reaches different audiences. We're going to hopefully do a county-wide mailer to make sure that everyone knows how great the Johnson County Library is and get some new card signups. And we also have a new staff intranet project that we started on before COVID hit. So once we get a little calmer, we'll start that back up again. And some of our ongoing work that we're working on, obviously COVID-19 response takes up a large amount of our time. We're working on branding alignment. We want to make sure that staff understand the importance of branding and that all of our brand is consistent across our various branches and our online presence, etc. And we're going to be refining our different procedures. Again, with Laura and I being new to these positions and new to our department, we just want to make sure that everything is running efficiently and that staff at the library know how to get things communicated. And we're also working on really moving to data-driven decisions. A lot of marketing, you know, you can measure click-through rates and everything, and a lot of it is just, have you heard of it? There's so many great things that the library is doing, and I think something that we all hear very often is, I didn't know the library offered that. That's so cool. I wish I had known about that. So we're hoping to do that, but also measure things so we know that we're spending our ad dollars effectively, which it looks like we're on the right track with that, and giving people what they need to succeed. And I believe that is all. So thank you so much for this opportunity. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Hey, Alyssa, this is David Sims. Quick question. I think it's great, all the social media and everything else you're doing. Are we, what are we doing to reach the people that do not have computers? I hope we're not completely ignoring those. I don't know how you reach them efficiently, but there are a few of those still out there.
Yeah, definitely. So we discussed a lot about the guide for the fall guide. Obviously the summer guide, we canceled the printing of because our buildings were closed and we weren't sure what the opening was going to be, but we decided that it's important to still do a fall guide. And that's going to focus less on events, scheduled events that are happening, and more on just library services so that people know where to access them and how to find them, and just the breadth of services that we offer for people who don't have access to the internet.
Elisa, this is Wayne Burke. I've got to tell you, I can't tell you how extremely proud I am that all the things that are going on this summer, the fact that I see it on tweets, I see it on Facebook, emails, and just that human touch that people need, and the library is providing that. So kudos to you and all the staff that are making this happen. I cannot thank you enough for all your hard work on that.
Thank you, that means a lot. And the staff is just really talented and really hardworking, and I'm so grateful to be a part of this team.
Are there any other questions for Alyssa? If there aren't, I'd like to invite Scott to come and give us an update on the Comprehensive Library Master Plan. Scott?
Good afternoon, everybody. This is going to be a multi-speaker presentation, so I'll give you guys a heads up on that up at the top. First, you'll hear a little bit from Sean about kind of the foundation and the goals of the project. You'll hear after that from Rick Wise, who is our lead architect, or our senior architect on the project. And after that, you'll hear from Mike Burson, who's our construction manager on the project. And then you'll hear from me again towards the end to give some other updates. So I'll go ahead and step down and turn it over to Sean for those kind of introductory slides.
Great, thanks, Scott. Could I have the next slide, please? So just talking really about what we're doing here at Central as part of the Central Staff Space Consolidation. One of the challenges, and we know that, is that we have 30,000 square feet in Antioch, and that's part of that space has been used to house some of the staff that should normally be back in Central because we had that available space, but we're moving to a smaller location of 16,000 square feet at the new Antioch, and those staff need to be relocated. That was part of the issue. The other issue was that on that land, we also have the SSB building where our facilities staff resided, and they needed to have a home where they could move into. And so that was one of the pieces, which is how do we bring staff back into Central but not have them impact the public space. Also, we began to look at administration and the space that they occupied and other people, and then looked at adjacencies to think about what does a modern work environment look like? What does it look like when you're bringing in young workers, Generation Z, and you're having all the way through maybe Generation X or baby boomers? What kind of spaces do we need to create for these different people and how they think about work? And then how do we create spaces that remain flexible and agile so that we're able to go forward into the future? And so those were all of the things. The other kind of piece is looking back and realizing that for 25 years, we haven't really done anything to the staff space at all. Either there's some issues on the mechanical side, but there's also just the wear and tear of needing to kind of do a refresh and replace things that have become obsolete and out of date. And so that was really the impetus, which was how do we more efficiently use the staff space and bring people from these locations that are not going to exist in the near future. Next slide, please. So here's the idea. When we're thinking about this upgrade, really it's about providing efficiency, increasing convenience for patrons, efficiency on the space uses, beginning to think about, you know, as you worked 25 years ago, it was really a paper-centric world. Today we're meeting digitally, and it's a digital world, and so maybe the footprint and the way that you handle paper or files is really different. Again, looking for something that is sustainable as far as that universal design, something that we may have to refresh from time to time, but again, we're not going to be pulling down walls or rearranging spaces in large senses. Next slide. And this is where I hand it over to Rick.
Okay. So Rick Wise, Clark Anderson Partners. So happy to be here today giving the presentation. We're going to go with an overview of the entire project and stop me if you have questions along the way. Some of this that you're going to see is going to be pretty familiar. There's going to be some deviations as the design has evolved. We're about midway through design development, so the design continues to progress. Next slide. So regarding the overall project site, the main changes or the main updates that we're proposing for the site, let's start with signage. Currently, there's signage on the north face of the building. That sign, I think, there's challenges to see it at different times, so it's replacing that sign that's on the building. We're also looking at adding a new monument sign along 87th Street. Again, trying to improve the visibility of the library as you're driving east and west on 87th Street. There is signage currently along 87th Street, but it's a little bit hidden right now. It's on a curved concrete wall, and it's not really visible if you're driving eastbound along 87th. In addition, we are looking at adding a small addition on the east side of the building for a new drive-up window. And it'll also include the book return. So those would be changes along the east side. And then one of the things we talked about previously was the idea of adding gates around the south and east side of the building. These are principally to reduce or slow down traffic that is trying to bypass the intersection of 87th and Farley. So we are adding some security gates. It would be card access. The exact extent of that is still being developed. That will be a new addition, a new thing at the on the south side of the building. In addition, we're wanting to improve the dock. The big charge of this project was to address materials handling. So as you'll see in a second when we go through the plan, the hub of activity will be the materials handling courier space. We're really trying to make an enhancement to this back area to facilitate better flow through of product from the couriers that are coming from the other branches. And then we're also looking at repaving the south side of the parking lot. You've had several projects over the last couple of years to replace the asphalt. This sort of takes that next step along the south side of the building. So that's a general overview of the exterior. One other comment, is that we will be repainting the exterior of the building, all of the concrete panels. That's part of the scope as well. Next slide. This just shows an overall floor plan of what we're proposing. Anything shown in color is the primary focus of this project. Everything shown in white was principally renovated a few years ago, and we're not planning to do much work in those areas. We'll talk about some CRP work here in a second that may have some minor elements that would touch those areas, but really the bulk of the project is staff areas that were renovated in the last project. Next slide. Let's start in this area. It's where the current kids area is, along the west side of the building. As you can see, there are 4 main areas, starting with the blue, administration. Is there a question? Okay. We are planning to relocate the administrative offices where they currently are today to where kids is presently. And this will include all of the administrative staff that'll be in this area. In purple is finance. We have 3 folks that are currently, again, over in the admin space. They'll be relocating. So they will be in their own office area. Then we have a large meeting room in the center. One of the goals and one of the things you'll see in the design is that we have lots of different meeting spaces that we're developing as part of the design that will occur in different areas for staff. This will help to provide staff access to meeting space much more than what they have today. It should also free up public meeting space as well. The area in pink in the middle is the Programming, Outreach, and Information Services group. And I think what you'll find through all of these is we're trying to remove as many walls as possible, trying to create as much of an open office environment as we can. And we'll look at different mechanisms to accommodate privacy when necessary, and heads down type work. In addition, the area to the green is the CX group, IT, web content, and creative services. They are directly located adjacent to the current server room, which is the big green box at the north end of, or the upper part of the screen, south of the space. And then lastly, along the northern edge, or along the bottom of the image, you can see additional meeting rooms, staff meeting rooms that we're providing, as well as 1 new public meeting room in this area. Any questions about this portion of the building? Moving on to the next slide. Again, I talked about the hub activity. The materials handling group was originally the primary focus of this project, and it really becomes the heart of what we're trying to accomplish. The courier area is that really central hub where all the product comes in and leads from. So there's been a lot of time and design effort developing a process for moving those green tubs in and out of the building. We will have sliding doors to open quickly and close quickly into that area. We have a shipping and receiving area that we use for the materials handling group, and then the materials handling staff, ILL, tech services, and collections in green, directly adjacent to the server room. And then finally, just to the north of that, or just on the bottom of your screen, we're trying to have a central hub of storage for all the different departments, so that there's 1 central location for staff to get access to their supplies. Next slide. A little bit further over to the east, go back 1. We have a dedicated custodial area. We also have a dedicated new dock for general building deliveries. I think one of the challenges today is that you have essentially 1 back door for bringing in materials. We're trying to separate traffic flows to be a little bit more functional. So we have a separate dock for those large deliveries that you need to accommodate. And then we are providing some office space for facility staff. Next. The break room and the old tech services areas are being renovated as well. The break room is being renovated to create, again, a more soothing, relaxing place for people to recharge as they need to take a break from their activities. We renovated a mother's room as part of the last project that will remain in its current location. We are creating new human resources office space directly adjacent to the break room for staff to have access to those folks. And then we have another bank of shared meeting space for staff that a lot of different sizes of rooms to accommodate different meeting types that'll be available for check-in. And then this area is also where we plan to harden the space for storm events. Currently, the back hallway is your shelter space in case of a storm. We're trying to create more dedicated space for storm shelter. Next. At the front of the building is redoing the branch services area, enlarging it slightly, really trying to create a dedicated branch operation, much like the other branches that you have within the system. As I mentioned previously, it's adding a new drive-up window and book return to better accommodate the needs of the public. It'll be much like what's at Monticello or Blue Valley. In addition, we're adding 2 new staff restrooms in this area. Right now, the branch services area does not have staff restrooms. So one of the goals of the project was to create a dedicated pair of restrooms. We are creating a connection point between branch services and the makerspace. So those staff, those maker staff, have access to restrooms from their area as well. Next. Moving a little bit further to the south, the old bookstore is being renovated into a development office. They will have the folks that work in there, and will have access to a dedicated meeting space for those folks for when they're meeting with people coming in. And then you can see we're creating a new public meeting room that was bookstore storage. So we're going to give back as much public space as we can, and that's an example. If we go into teens, the area that we're labeling teen media rooms, that's currently the youth services offices. So they will be relocating into the staff area to the west, and then this becomes dedicated additional public space, primarily for teen use, with technology to accommodate the gaming and other activities that they use. Next. And then finally, the kids area is the old admin space and gallery area. Here we're trying to create as much open space and openness as possible, trying to increase the amount of access to daylight. The exterior wall will be opened up much more than it is today. Really trying to capitalize on that natural connection to the park that's to the south. We do have a dedicated story time room that is planned in the southeast corner of the space, a family restroom, and you can see all the collection elements that are being relocated. And then one of the wish list items is to create an outdoor program space, a fenced in, secure space for families to go outside, kids to go outside. And the program elements are still being defined, but it's on our wish list if budget allows, but we think it'd be a great enhancement to this area. Next.
Paging Stephanie in the foundation, please.
Yes, ma'am.
We have a fantastic opportunity for someone getting their name on a really awesome outdoor play space.
You got that right. Yes, yes. Yes, I agree. Would you go on a call with me, Bethany?
I would be happy to. And
All
also,
right.
Olathe and their team media area have an Oculus Rift. It's awesome. We need one or two because we're more awesome.
We are tremendously more awesome. Okay, awesome. Let me know. We'll chat.
I will turn it over to Mike Burson.
Good afternoon. Appreciate you letting me speak with you today. So I'm Mike Burson, Senior Project Manager for Titan Belt. We'll be the construction manager for the renovation project that Rick just walked you through. As the design is progressing, we begin to think and plan for the components of construction. So as a team, as we've been going through that, a couple of topics have come up that we wanted to present and discuss to the board today. Next slide. The first topic we're going to talk about, proposal number 1, is considering amending the CSSC project budget to include CRP work. So Rick just walked you through what's defined as the CSSC project. So why is this coming up now? So the VFA was just completed, and now we know what projects need to happen at Central. They've now been defined what capital improvements need to happen. Previously, those items were unknown. We are asking this proposal for this to combine this work so we can do 3 things. 1, save time. And 2, save money, and 3, reduce the facility's closure overall. Next slide. So what is the CRP work at Central Resource that we will be trying to approach? So in general, just like your home, the major working parts of a library have a certain lifespan. So just like you have to replace your water heater or your furnace, air conditioner, the same things hold true for commercial properties. So here on the list, you can see replace the 26-year-old air handling units. So the air handling unit would be the same thing as the furnace where the fan is in your basement. Replace the 26-year-old boilers. In this case, these boilers not only act as hot water, but all for hand washing and such, but also the HVAC system uses hot water for heating as its source. They are also 26 years old. Upgrading the building automation system. This is equivalent to the thermostat in your home, only much, much more complicated because of all the different components and moving parts inside of the commercial building. And the majority of those components are at the same 26-year-old age. And then replace the 26-year-old electrical service. So over time, as electrical components age, they have a tendency to get hot and or overheat and trip, which could cause power interruptions. So this is the CRP work that we are considering. So I'll pause here to see if anybody has any questions. Okay, next slide.
Hey, Mike, this is David Sims. What is the normal life of those air handling units and boilers? You know?
So there was a study done on those, and what I can speak to is that the study does define what the useful life of those things are. The reason those pieces were identified was because they are nearing very quickly their useful life. I can't speak to each individual piece. I can share with you that the chiller, which is the cooling component that provides cold water to provide cooling in the building, it was replaced as part of the last renovation of the building. And the reason it was replaced is because it was failing. It failed actually a couple of times intermittently before it could be completely replaced. So the shorter answer should be they're near the end of their life, which is why they're being targeted for the CRP work.
David, it's normally 25 to 30 years for that type of equipment is what is recommended.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I outlined what the components were. So the question is, why would we want to combine them? So a few items: lower trade contractor fees as a percentage due to the increased revenue. So what does that mean in layman's terms? It means the more work that you do, the less your fee percentage needs to be as a contractor. So if you're going to do $1,000 of work, you would have a higher fee percentage. If you're going to do 10,000, you're willing to lower your fee percentage because you're going to make more profit. So if we combine that work, the CRP work with the CSSC work, our buying power is increased and we can lower that component. Overhead savings achieved by having the work managed by the same project team. That is my team, myself and my team, that has to manage the work that's going on. As our team, each individual can manage a certain amount of volume of construction, and we will be able to manage the CRP work and the CSSC work with the same staff. So you're able to take advantage of the savings by having our staff manage more volume of work. And then disruption to staff and patrons only one time. So instead of doing the CRP work after the CSSC is complete and having to have another set of disruptions, we can combine those two and do them at the same time, and therefore not disrupting the patrons and staff a second time. Ultimately, if you want to sum it up, you're ripping the Band-Aid off, right? We don't want to drag this out. And that's part of the reason, besides the other two that we're presenting. So any questions about what I've gone through so far? Okay. So proposal number 2 that the team wants to present today is whether or not we maintain full services at Central Resource Library during the renovations, or create a temporary modified services area that we have deemed a Little Central. And that Little Central concept came from the last renovation that was done in the building, or it worked quite well. So I'll go into a little more detail here. Next slide. So what I wanted to go through first, what are the construction impacts that will affect the patrons and the staff with both the CRP and CSSC project? So a 2-week complete building power outage to replace the electrical service, that would require a complete closure. A 5-week complete building HVAC outage, that would require a complete closure. 4 weeks of rolling shutdowns to patron areas while the building automation system is upgraded. Not a complete shutdown, but we would have to go into areas and they would not have air conditioning or heating at the time those components were being changed. Then 5 weeks of rolling shutdown to the patron area, power and lights while the internal electrical panels are relocated. Just like you have a breaker box in your home, this Central Resource building has dozens. And as part of the electrical replacement, we will have to go replace each of those throughout the areas. And then 4 months of parking lot area shutdown in order to facilitate construction. So in order for us to do our work that Rick outlined, we'll have to shut down several of the parking lot areas to create a safe distance. And for logistics, we don't want patrons or staff up against heavy equipment and potential hazards. And then the branch services area will have to be shut down for the duration of the renovation. So this will require the staff in the area and the book sorter to be out of service. So because of what Rick showed you in the design, with the addition that's going to happen in that area will be a very heavy construction zone and will not be suitable for the staff to be working in it or for the book sorter to remain. And then lastly, although we will do as many of the loud activities as we can at night, daily construction does create some noise. We will minimize that with temporary partitions and other things, but we can't eliminate that altogether. If any of you have had a renovation happen in your house, you know that dust finds its way into things, and there is just a disturbance when you do construction, no matter how you plan and how careful you are. Any questions about the impacts? Okay, next slide. So a slide here to compare the overall durations of the two scenarios. Full services option, the project duration, the library remains open as much as possible. That overall project duration would be 12 months and as currently scheduled. You can see February 2021 through January of 2022. If we were to go to a limited services option, we would lessen that project duration to 9 months. So overall, if we can go to a limited services option, then we would save 3 months over the overall duration of the project. And the reason for that is that instead of having to phase the project to keep materials and areas open, we're able to take all of the space at one time, and therefore our construction crews can be much more efficient in what they're doing. I'll pause here for questions.
Hey, Mike, this is David. So either way, there's going to have to be some closure. Is that correct?
Yes, David, that is correct. Either way, there'll have to be some closures. If we keep the full services model open and we do not do Little Central, there'll still be approximately a 2-month period where we're going to have some major HVAC and power components that we're going to have to deal with. And so in general, in that area, there would need to be a closure.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay. So we talked about potential cost savings in the introductory slide for this. So here are the big picture dollars and cents. So saving in construction manager services, we discussed our staff doing more with the same amount of staff. Saving in temporary partitions, since the building would be more or less closed to the public minus an area we're going to show you here in a minute, we don't have to separate ourselves from the patrons and staff with plastic and temporary walls. So that would be the savings you see with the 20,000. Savings in temporary HVAC, because we will be doing HVAC work as outlined in the scope. We will have we'll have to keep the books comfortable, but we don't have to keep people comfortable, and that is a different level of care, therefore less costs if we just have to keep the books comfortable. And then savings in shift work and overtime. In order to minimize the outages and effects to the patrons and the staff, we would be doing what in labor terminology is called shift work or overtime. And that comes typically with a 50% premium. So what you're seeing in the large savings of the $220,000 is not doing that shift or overtime and premium work in those labor hours. So overall, you would have the $350,000 in project savings if you went to the Little Central or limited services model. And, we would hope that the team could then utilize those savings to hopefully get some of the wish list items, that Rick has discussed and the team has discussed. Any questions on the cost savings?
That's just the cost savings from going from the full service to the limited service, correct?
Yes, sir.
That has nothing to do with any cost savings we would get by combining the two projects.
Actually, this is considering the $80,000 above actually does consider the combining of them.
Okay.
All right, next slide. So we talked about Little Central or the limited services area. What we've highlighted in pale yellow here is the front main entrance area of the central branch. This area is got great light. It's 2 stories. It feels much larger than it actually is. So we feel like it's a great space for that reason. Also, you get to continue to use the main entrance of your library so that patron experience doesn't change. If you look to your left, you can see that the main public restrooms in the front of the building would still remain open to the staff and patrons, so that experience would be unaffected. We would maintain the service point that exists, as well as the pickup and hold area that would exist. That sort of just gives you a general idea of where it is in the branch. And then we were discussing moving the branch services, have their temporary offices being in the current training room, which you see in the bottom right hand of the yellow area. So along with that, there has been some discussion about whether the makerspace could stay open, and we do have some plumbing connections and some heavy construction to do in that area to make some of these renovations happen. But there would be a way to keep the makerspace open with maybe some limited hours and maybe a month or 2 of full closure to do those plumbing connections. But there is a way to keep that makerspace area open if that is something that's desired.
Would the makerspace closure, this may be Sean question, if we close the makerspace, does that affect our naming agreement with Black and Beach? Is that something we need to take into consideration?
Yep, that's a really good question. I don't believe that within the contract that there was a contingency to remain open when we're doing that, and I don't think it will.
I could jump in too, Sean.
Yeah, that would be great. Thanks, Stephanie.
Yeah. You know, I've kind of struggled with this, Bethany. We need to tell them exactly what's going on. I will say the honorary hosts for Library Lets Loose are Black and Beach related. Sydney Wallace-Lage is one of the leaders in the water department for Black and Beach. And I think we probably just need to have a candid conversation about it and see where we are. So I appreciate you thinking about that sponsorship. It's important and it carries ramifications for the future. So I will, we need to kind of powwow around that and talk and be very candid with them. Is that helpful?
Yeah, it was more just making sure that that kind of thing is on people's radar, because to me it seems like there would be implications that if we're going to close a huge chunk of the branch and we may not be able to keep that open, then they're not necessarily getting bang for the buck for
right. No, you're exactly right. You're exactly right. And we'll strategize around that much sooner than later. So thank you for bringing that up, Bethany.
Yeah, and I want to say, Bethany, it's a really good point. I think we're going to have to talk to them too about, COVID and how we've had to close the makerspace and find a way. I'm sure they'll understand the COVID issue, but I think there's a solution. They've been a great partner with us, and I think we can find options that will make them happy and just being a great support for the library system. I can't say enough about them. So I think we need to talk about the 2 things, which is it's not available now to the public. And again, with this closure, we're looking at ways to maybe provide the service, but there is going to be significant downtime.
Do we have room at any of our other branches where we could do a mini maker space? That Monticello has a pretty big meeting room where we could move at least some of the equipment and our makers and residents and do something a little bit more temporary there. That I know that we would lose a big meeting room, but if there was a way to facilitate that service during the closure, then that would be kind of cool to be able to do that.
That's definitely something we can look into. Keep a note on that.
So any other questions about the little central area idea? Okay. So overall, the library is internally discussing what services can be maintained, but it will at least be pickups and holds for materials. So the next slide, Scott has put together to give you a timeline visual of the two different project timelines.
Thanks, Mike. So just to repeat what Mike is mentioning, we are talking with central managers and also the makerspace folks to see to finalize what those little central services could be, and we can bring that back for you next month. So on this slide, there's two timelines. The top one is our regular schedule, which doesn't include a long-term closure. And then the bottom one is the little central option, which would close the majority of the building during construction. The real difference in the two is on the far right. So you can see in the top one that we would be finishing up construction toward the end of 21, early 22, and then moving staff back in and furnishings back in the first quarter of 22. And then on the bottom timeline, we're looking at that construction work really finishing in Q4 of 21, and then having staff and furnishings move in still around the end of the year of 21. So as Mike mentioned earlier, about 3 months earlier in that slide. Okay, next slide, please. So this is the budget dollars slide. You guys probably remember that some of you may remember that last July we brought this to you. So that 8.7 million is the existing CSSC scope that Rick went over earlier. And then the 2.4 million is the amount for those additional CRP repairs. So the 2.4 million has already been approved by the board as far as money for CRP repairs. It's a combination of previous year's funds and also some 2021 funds in there. So really it's in two already allocated buckets, and what we would be asking for is to combine the two buckets into one, allowing us to perform the CRP work alongside the CSSC work. A note on that slide real quickly, and this goes back to David's comment about dollars. So when we had done the original VFA study, the estimate that we had for those CRP dollars was closer to about 4 million. So we are looking at a pretty decent sized cost savings there to be able to perform this work now. And then I've got one more slide for you. Go ahead, Michaela. Thank you. So what we're requesting here isn't anything for tonight. We're requesting decisions on these in August. And I want to talk a little bit about those two decisions just to kind of wrap them up. So the first one is to consider amending the CSSC project authorization to include that needed CRP work. The second one is to consider closing Central or much of Central for the duration of CSSC construction, except for that little Central component, which will at least allow for hold pickup and material return. So we have an opportunity here to be proactive and to take care of our major systems in the building at Central. And that I feel is good stewardship of our resources. Combining that CRP work in with the Central renovation work timeline and being able to close the majority of Central will allow construction to proceed more quickly and to get the building back open to patrons sooner. Accomplishing the CRP work now also allows the replacement to be done on our timeline, which saves us money and then limits disruption if it were to if it were to fail and we would need to have kind of an emergency closure. Performing this work now will also make continuity of operations at Central much smoother. So for those reasons, I'm recommending that the board approve both of those in August. And I'll go ahead and pause now and see if there are any questions that we can answer for you.
Scott, this is Amy. When we did the central renovation before, we did the little central concept.
That's true. So we've done this before as far as when we, just like you mentioned, Amy, and that was a way that we could still provide some good patron service and get the work done at Central too. Yep. Thanks for pointing that out.
So how long, I can't remember, but how long was how long were they closed down that time?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm trying to bring that back in my brain, and it seems like it was about 14 months. I'm thinking it was just a bit longer than a year, if I'm remembering right.
And so a lot of the people from Central would go over to like Oak Park. Was that where a lot of them went?
Yeah, so when we think about what would happen with staff when the building closes, so we'd kind of already been thinking that many staff would be moving out to kind of be out of the way of construction. So we would continue to staff our other locations to meet the patron need. So just because Central's closing doesn't necessarily mean that the kind of volume of patrons would be reduced. So we would look toward other branches to temporarily put the branch staff or the public service staff. And I think as Sean mentioned toward the beginning, we would look at potentially Antioch or Lackman to temporarily house some of our back of the house staff. Also, one other thing, the benefit, I guess, a silver lining of our kind of stay-at-home order has been that we are now pretty good at working remotely. So that gives us added flexibility with having potentially some of our staff work from home too.
Okay, I don't remember it being a big problem when we were shut down before, so I think your recommendation's good.
Cool, thanks.
It seems, Scott, this
yes,
is
sir.
David, the two things that we won't be giving service to is the computers and the meeting rooms. Correct? Everything
Right,
else will be able to do, correct?
So the meeting rooms, I think that you're right. One of the things that we are figuring out whether we can do, whether it's feasible, is to be able to offer, I'll say at least Wi-Fi service, if not being able to have maybe a laptop lending or something like that. That's still one of the kind of things that we need to solidify. And then the other piece that we'll be working on to see if we can do is being able to continue to offer holds access, at least to the central collection. So we need to get some detail work done on that, and we'll be able to bring that back to you next month.
I mean, it seems like the most anybody would have to travel is probably 3 or 4 miles, correct, to either Oak Park or one of the other ones.
Right, that is a good benefit. Yeah, we've got Oak Park that's real close.
Should we consider, I mean, could we put, or do you think it's necessary, or maybe we just think about whether to take some of the computers over to those places if we think it's going to increase demand, and assuming there's space at the other places.
I think that's a
also
good, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Lenexa City Center is also really not that far down to 87th. If we wanted to divert computers or laptops there, then that would also be fairly convenient for people who are in Lenexa.
This is Commissioner Hanslick. This is Commissioner Hanslick.
Hello, Commissioner.
Oh, excuse me. I just wanted to kind of weigh in a little bit here, that if it's at all possible to have some computers available at Central while we're doing this work. I know that there are clients of the library or patrons of the library in that area that depend on the library for internet access and for computer access. And there are some of those that don't have transportation to go to other libraries. So if there is any way to keep at least a couple of computers available, especially now when we have such high unemployment and people are looking for jobs and they may really need to access the computer. I think it's important to bear that in mind. I'd hate to pull that resource out from under their feet right when people need it the most. So if there's any way to do that, I would highly encourage that.
So can I jump in here? Because this may be something Scott isn't aware of. Michelle Beasley, the head of our IT department, and I have talked a little about using the tech bar, which is, if you're familiar with Central, is at the front of the building and would be part of the little library. It's adjacent to the restrooms and the community bulletin boards. And we talked a little about putting laptops along there for the public to use. And so it's something that we're exploring, and we hear what you're saying, Commissioner, and other board members. The goal is to provide some level of computing services at Central. And I think that's the thing that COVID has taught us, which is how much of a resource that is for the public. So we're looking at solutions to do exactly what you said, and it's something we're thinking through very carefully.
There may even be trailer type options that, in terms of temporary space for outside, something that would be powered and air conditioned. I was a wedding that had the most fantastic outdoor bathroom I've ever seen. So surely there's a solution for meeting space or something, even if it was just a pod or something that could be adjacent to the building, covered by our Wi-Fi. And I'm sure that we could come up with a way to run that so that we have that service, at least partially, if the tech bar doesn't go far enough in terms of what we can offer.
Thank you. That's a good suggestion. One other thing before I go ahead and mute myself again is to recognize our two board liaisons for this project. Amy Ruo and David Sims have been great. And we meet kind of opposite schedule of the board meeting to give them some updates too. So I wanted to say thank you to Amy and David. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
You're welcome. Thanks, Scott.
Okay, I'd like to just provide the updates if Jennifer and Nancy can give us an update on the reopening, and then we'll go with after that, Amanda Wollmeyer, to just kind of give an update on a past program we did with genealogy.
All right, thank you very much, everybody. Jennifer Munkin, Associate Director for Branch Services, and Nancy Birmingham, who's the Assistant Branch Manager at Leawood, and she is the Project Manager for our reopening project. She's going to give you some updates, and then I'll fill in a couple gaps.
Good afternoon. Thank you for listening to our update on our reopening project. Just a refresh, the original project scope was to get our physical collection back in the hands of our patrons, get the circulation and service staff back in our buildings off of furlough, and reopen our physical buildings with those vital computers and other uses to the public. So next slide. Some of the high level risks of this project are quite obviously COVID-19 itself, the risk of catching or spreading the disease in a pandemic. Resurgence, which some of us have seen, directives from outside of library control have been a risk to the reopening project. Facilities not being able to meet demands or have the resources to perform sanitizing tasks. Happy to report that has not been a discoverable risk in this project. The shifting timeline, the idea of the plan was to be able to move further along the reopening timeline with the capability of moving backwards should that be necessary and directed. Another risk was staff resignations, which might leave the library short-staffed, and the possibility, as always, of unrealistic patron expectations. The project team is comprised of myself. I am the Assistant Branch Manager for Leawood Pioneer Library. My sponsor, Jen Munkin, have been working closely with representatives from as much of the library system as we could fit around our virtual table. So, next slide. So in the reopening timeline, you'll see we are in July. Our buildings are open. The collection is readily getting back into the hands of the public. It is circulating. You saw those numbers earlier, but it is circulating. Our staff is back from furlough, but we are always looking towards this phase 3, which would entail full access to our library as our patrons certainly want, with meeting rooms, in-person programming, and other services like the makerspace that are not available today. At the moment, the reopening team is not recommending modifications in the hours. That again is due to a couple of factors centered around staff returning. We have several empty positions, and there are some leave options being exercised that have left us a little short-staffed. We'll have time for questions on that in just a minute, or I can pause for questions on that now. Jen, do you want to finish first and then have questions?
Go ahead and finish.
Okay, next slide, please. This was a snapshot of other local library systems as of the 29th of June. This information does change fairly rapidly. Again, with Governor Kelly's order, our masks have changed. So the Olathe would now be requiring masks. As you'll notice, KCMO had the modified hours. KCK had actually stopped service on the 29th due to positive staff and patron cases. The Mid-Continent Public Library branch, the hours varied by branch, but they are also operating under a reduced or a modified hours schedule. And I also added in Lawrence just to round out a more wider population base. So many of us have the same recommendations in place with those 60-minute or in our case 70-minute computer usage sessions. Programs and donations are paused at many of our sister systems. So this slide speaks to that. These are some of the signs of our times. Sorry for the pun. You will see the idle-free zone. This is outside the Blue Valley Library, where those long lines used to be, but I'm happy to report are no longer the norm. Some modified hours signs and much of the physical distancing signs. One more slide of these. Visitors and staff are encouraged to wear masks while in the building and practice social distancing. You'll notice along the floors of many of the libraries, various places about please stand here. Those are where we have lines at our service points, just in case we have multiple people in line at times. It's easier to have the 6-foot distance if it's obvious where you should stand. We'd like to open for any questions about reopening.
Let me just add a couple things before we take your questions. So we will be getting new signs if we haven't already that ask people to wear masks to comply with the governor and the BOCC's order. We are not getting lots of pushback on that. We've had almost 100% compliance so far this week with that order, so that's good. More people are upset about not being able to stay on the computers longer, but we really are trying to encourage people to not linger in the libraries. As Nancy said, we are not recommending altering our modified hours at this time, just due to we have not got the staff back that we were hoping. We have a few more resignations, and so we're asking to continue the modified hours as well. We also made the decision to close all the meeting rooms and study rooms for the rest of the year. We will be revisiting that every month to see if there's any change that would allow us to reopen them, but it's easier for us to close them and then roll it back than it would be to continue to just extend it a little bit at a time. So I just wanted you to be aware of that decision as well. So with that, we'll be happy to take any questions you have.
I have two questions. One, are we pursuing the exception with county to start being able to advertise for hiring? That is my first question.
Yes, we are. We meet with HR every week and talk about that. That's a question that I ask. I'm working on filling out forms right now to ask for those exceptions, and we hope to get positions posted in the next couple of weeks.
Okay, excellent. My second question is, what is the rationale behind keeping the meeting rooms closed?
Two things, maybe three. One, we're don't have the staff to monitor them or regularly clean them. So it would have to be using at your own risk. Also with the smaller study rooms, it violates the social distancing policies. So we're hesitant to do that.
How would you know that people who were in there were violating social distancing protocols?
Just for the size of them. The sizes of many of the study rooms are very small.
I know, but if I came in with my children to use that space, how is it that you know that we're violating social distancing? You don't know who I'm socially distancing with. We don't know who people are social distancing with. So why are we being nannies?
Well, we don't want staff to have to be nannies.
I know, but that's what I'm saying is, why would you presume that people are doing something wrong instead of that they can use the space? That's what I'm asking is, where's the presumption here that it's our job to police patrons using our facilities? That I want to understand the rationale that where you guys are coming up with this from an administrative level.
Yeah, so we talked about it in the sense of, with some of these meeting rooms, how are we going to, some of them can just do 2 people and someone could come in, and with some of the situations in the study rooms, they were being used by tutors. So they would bring in a student and the tutor, and there was no way for us within those 2-person study rooms for that to be, for us to figure out who's a family member, who's not with that. And then the other piece with those
Why do
rooms.
you, Sean? That's what I don't understand, is why are you presuming it's the library's job to police this? That's what I want to understand.
We're not the police, and we can't police it. And I think that's really the answer. We're putting these markers on the floor to say 6-foot distance and following these guidelines that within these smaller study rooms that we couldn't provide those guidelines. We also felt like we couldn't clean them at the way or at the level that they would need to be cleaned to assure the public any kind of safety. I think the desire for us was, we came at it from the standpoint of how can we open study rooms and meeting rooms and make these available while still assuring that there's some level of safety both for staff and the public. And we said, the question was, well, if we're able to clean them, then between people coming in, and if the rooms were locked and then people would book them, then that would be a way to do that. And the question was, do we have enough resources to do that, staffing resources to do that? And the answer was no. Is it overly cautious to do that? I think you could accuse the library of being overly cautious, but up until recently, and I mean really within 4 weeks, do we get any kind of definitive data on how long the virus existed on surfaces? And even now, we're getting new data on as far as it being an aerosol. And so this is why, with the same rationale that we were like, okay, we want to be able to wrap furniture so people can't stay, so the function is open, and then we don't want to be able to create environments where groups of people can be in a closed space. I think that was the rationale behind this. We're still looking for ways to open these rooms, and we talked about that with the mandatory masks recently, which is like, can we, will the wearing of masks allow those spaces then to be opened? We don't know, and so we're just taking it month by month. It was an abundance of caution.
Okay.
Sean, kind of as a follow-up, I kind of agree with what Bethany says. I mean, I think people can go in and wipe themselves if we just provide that. But one of the things in the article that I had sent you, it talked about was circulation was a big deal. How in China there was, somebody spread it because the restaurant had such poor circulation, it just kind of lingered. I guess the question is, and you may not even know the answer to this, is how good is the circulation in that room? That may be more important, because if I'm a patron and I'm feeling worried, I can go in, especially assuming we provide wipes, I could go in and wipe the tables, I could wipe the chairs, and that would take care of a lot of that stuff. But I could not go in there and, and I don't know, clean the air that's in there if we have poor circulation. And I don't know, maybe you can answer, maybe it's, you have no idea what the circulation's like.
Well, I know with our newer buildings, like the Lenexa and Monticello, the circulation is probably better than like the Edgerton and the DeSoto's, and even Central, where we're looking at HVAC units that are 26 years old. Maybe Juan could talk to this a little bit, as I'm not an expert on kind of the air exchange rate. Juan,
No, I don't expect you to maybe know the answer there, but I think, maybe Jennifer and Nancy, that's something that, it may be where we can open up the meeting rooms in some of the newer ones first, and then the other ones later, or maybe that's, as you're evaluating at some point, try to determine that answer from
Along with that, aside from the cleaning and the social distancing pieces, many of our rooms are being used to store furniture and quarantine areas. So Leewood, for example, all of their meeting rooms or all their study rooms are being used for quarantining materials. So that's another consideration in keeping them closed. As long as we're having to quarantine, we have to have spaces to do that. What other questions do you have?
This is Commissioner Hanslick. I just had a couple of questions in regard to the staff. Do we know, are there many more staff that are still out, just round percentages? I thought I heard you say about 70% of staff are back. Do we know how many more we anticipate coming back? That's my first question. And then second, do we have any idea of what are some of the reasons for staff not coming back? Is it childcare concerns, health exposure concerns, or they found other jobs in the interim? Do we have any kind of sense of that? So just trying to get a sense of where we are staffing wise.
Right. So every situation is unique, and everybody has different reasons. I'm a little uncomfortable speaking to those because they are protected leave statuses.
Sure.
So
I'm thinking just in general, if you have any.
There are concerns about working in the public. There are concerns about being around other people. That's the biggest thing.
Oh, is it? Okay. I wasn't sure if childcare might be a big issue.
That is the case for a few people, but it's mostly health concerns.
Okay. When do you think we might be back up to at least the staffing that we have that are on staff? I'm not talking about new hires. But
well, so yeah, my goal to be able to recommend modifying our hours back to closer to normal is to have about 85 to 90% of our staff back. Right now we're below 75%. So we're trying to get exceptions to hire, and that will help us tremendously. but we still do have people who are on protected leave.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Okay, thank you. Do you all have other questions for Nancy or I? All right. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon.
No, but good job, Jennifer and Nancy. I know it's been an awful lot of work having to learn this on the fly.
We absolutely are.
Thank you very much, Jennifer.
There's certainly no playbook for this, is there?
No, there's no playbook. What I want to say also is that our patrons have been really compliant. We have masks, disposable masks to give them, but as we track our incident reports, we're not seeing patrons being combative with other patrons or really making any statements by coming in and not wearing a mask. I think our patrons have just done a wonderful job with the understanding that wearing a mask to protect other people. And then maybe at the next board meeting, Juan can talk a little about the air exchange and filters and what we're doing to deal with air circulation and give you a little bit more detail with that. And we can definitely look at meeting rooms and working out schedules to see what options are available, particularly thinking about maybe some of our newer locations like Monticello and Lenexa, and see what options are available for opening those up. At this point, I'd like Amanda to come and talk a little about Genealogy Day. And yes, you're not seeing, there used to be a time where people would come in large numbers into our meeting rooms. Amanda, I'll leave it up to you.
Thanks, Sean. Yes, that was about 50 years ago. Hi, my name is Amanda Wallmeyer. I am the local history librarian for Johnson County Library. I lead a committee of 6 information specialists from 4 different branches, and we plan historically relevant programming. And I am also the staff liaison for the Johnson County Genealogical Society. You may remember an MOU that came across. We have one every year with them. And this partnership is very important as the Genealogical Society hosts their monthly meetings and their special interest groups in a lot of our spaces. Again, about 50 years ago, in the before times. They also staff the genealogy reference desk with their volunteers. So they man that area for the library. So Genealogy Day this year was on March 7th. It was our 2nd annual event. And this is the largest event for my focus area, and it's also one of the largest for the system as a whole. This year we took a slightly different approach to how we planned it. We have a system-wide committee, had people from multiple branches and multiple departments on it. Our door count for the day was 1,179 people that came in. That was the door count for the entire day at the library, and our event spanned the majority of the day. We know that at least 400 attended specifically for the presentations based on packet numbers we gave out and attendance at each session. We had 21 sessions in total with 7 speakers. Those sessions repeated throughout the day to ensure that people could go to multiple ones, get everything in that they wanted to. Our keynotes were Beth Folk and Angela Fields. Beth Folk is a nationally known genealogical researcher, speaks on a national stage, and is from Kansas City. And Angela Fields is part of our local genealogical society and specializes in genetic research, which is fairly new and is gaining a lot of interest among our patrons. These 2 keynote speakers were made possible by a donation through the Johnson County Library Foundation. So we really thank them for finding this donor and allowing us to have that. In between sessions, people could go and look at 2 heritage display areas, and over 15 vendors were in the gallery space for specific areas of research. For example, Mid-Continent Genealogy Center was there with a table, and the Midwest Afro-American Genealogical Interest Coalition was also there. So groups like that were available for people to talk with one-on-one. We also had genealogy area tours and one-on-one sessions with our volunteers from the Genealogical Society for people who didn't know how to start or maybe were stuck in a very first step of their research. And so that highlighted what the library has to offer to our patrons who may not have known it was there. So I really want to give a special thank you shout out to the Johnson County Genealogical Society, especially Darlene Jerome and Marcia Bennett. They were the spearhead committee on their end, and also our system-wide committee members. This event would not have run as smoothly without them. And also to our program and events coordinator, Joseph Keene. He was our project manager and also created the slide you're seeing on your screen that highlights how our event fit into the strategic plan. It fulfilled the education key performance area goal of providing a premier customer experience and also the outcome of aiding patrons to learn more about themselves and their world. So it was very important to highlight that. Next year, National Genealogy Day is March 6th. National Genealogy Day is always the first Saturday after the first full week in March. So we try to make sure our event coincides with that. We're undecided how we will conduct the event next year, as you can probably imagine, but we hope to see you all there in some capacity. So thank you for your time, and I'm glad to answer any questions you have.
Man, I just want to thank the resources out there are great. I've been having a good time exploring them online.
Excellent.
Well, I want to thank Amanda. The organization as a whole has really made a huge effort to define our key performance areas, outputs, and what we're measuring, and then the outcome. It's something that's been an initiative of the library, and I think it's something that commissioners are often really interested in, and as board members, you can see how we're defining what success looks like, and being able to gauge different types of programs. So great job, Amanda. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm going to give a little bit of information on the closed captioning. One of the things that we're struggling with is that Facebook streaming service, as far as we're aware, does not do closed captioning. And so what we're doing is recording this and then having it be transferred to YouTube and creating a link. A YouTube video can allow us to close caption. And then we're looking at a new technology called On24, which is our online platform. So we'd be moving away from Zoom, and that allows us, I believe, to do closed captioning in real time. And I believe, but don't quote me on this, has a language translation option built into it. So we're looking to have closed captioning available, I think, in August's meeting, but there will be a copy of this that will be closed captions, so patrons can get access to the information in this board meeting. We're just unable to do it in real time for this meeting. The next piece of information is Stephen T. Johnson is the artist who created the mosaics at the Lenexa City Center, and he's part of what they called the Coder Awards. There were 400 nominees, and he made the top 100. I think they're still in the progress of nominating, but this is a worldwide competition, and so this is a great honor to be in the top 100 to be considered for this award. Next issue is the county budget is coming. We will, Amy and I will be doing that on July 15th. It'll be between 8 and noon in the morning. There's a schedule, and it's a kind of a compressed schedule, so the commissioners are going to be really busy. Again, we'll be doing that in person, and the way that the commission has that set up is that they're on the diocese, and then they invite people to come into that room. We'll each be separated and be wearing a mask, so you can take the mask off when giving the presentation. And we'll be bringing the budget that you have voted on forward. I wanted to give an update on Lackman. Scott has been working with a real estate agent, and so he's going to give a brief next week as we're getting some of the data in, but we're looking at comparisons. The board has asked us to do that, and then we're doing a property estimate, which he talked to, and we should be able to share that data with you in August. As we talked earlier, we're planning to relocate some of the central staff to that location, but it also provided an interesting opportunity one of the things that the board had asked, particularly when thinking about the Friends in Lackman, was a way for us to really lower costs. And one of the things that we're looking at is maybe coming up with a proposal where maybe the Friends could use the front side of Lackman as a bookstore as we close the central bookstore, while staff occupy the back. That's a significantly less cost than we had talked about previously, and it would allow the board a period of 9 to 12 months to see how that building operated as a larger bookstore. It would also allow the Friends to do some form of sales with metered services, very much like restaurants, where they could bring a certain number of people in for a certain amount of time during a sale, and then they could leave. So we'll be bringing that to you in the future. And then the final piece is that the election office had reached out and had difficulty for 3 of our locations booking meeting spaces. And so we talked with the election office and said, we will make those meeting spaces available for you, and we'll coordinate ways that the public can come in and do the vote for the November election. And that concludes the county librarian's report. Do you have any questions?
Okay, thank you, Sean. That was a lot to cover. Okay, well, moving on. We have our consent agenda. I need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Wayne Burke, I move to approve the consent agenda.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. And I think for the first time ever, there's no new or old business.
Yes, there is no old or new business for you to consider this month.
Well, with that being said, I guess I need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, David Sims.
And a second?
Brady Butcher, second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
All opposed? Thank you very much, everybody, for all your hard work, and, keep it up. Thank you so much.